Hey, this is Matthew from Nerd News Today, and joining us today we have the current writer of all of the IDW Ghostbusters comics, as well as several other comics you guys might be reading out there, and that is Mr. Erik Burnham. Erik, how's it going today?
It's going pretty good. How about with you?
Not too bad. I know we're both stuck in our respective homes during this crazy quarantine times.
It's
What are
true.
you doing right now to keep yourself sane?
The funny thing is, I'm doing the same things that I would be doing if it wasn't a quarantine, minus uh, coffee shops and restaurants. So it's not too big of a change for me, although I am losing weight, so that's kind of nice. Nice plus, yeah. But I mean, yeah, no. So I'm reading. I'm trying to tackle my massive to read pile. I'm working on some comic projects that are due to come out next year. I'm working on some spec projects for fun and hopefully at some point profit. And TV works its way in there as well. So I mean, yeah, I've all the normal stuff I'd be working on. I'm kind of comfortable with that.
I will say it's really easy to lose weight when you're in the apocalypse, so that's at least the one big plus side of all this.
It's true. At least I don't have to run from anything, but I'll be readier for that if the need comes up.
So, of course, I do want to talk a lot about Ghostbusters because here on Nerd News Today, we're giant Ghostbusters fans. But outside of that, you're also working on a Red Sonja comic. Can you tell us a little bit about that title?
Sure. Red Sonja was something that I actually got started on a couple of years ago. I was asked to help pitch in on the massively busy Amy Chu's run, just take her plots and script them out. So I did that for a little bit and had a lot of fun, and that led to a couple of other Dynamite books, and eventually to this Red Sonja meeting the Chaos characters, Evil Ernie and Lady Demon, and so on. That group of characters that it's their 25th anniversary, and that's what they decided to do with it. It's just very different for me, and that's part of the reason that I enjoy it. A lot of the stuff that I write involves snark, pop culture, and very wry guys, basically like the Ghostbusters or Spider-Man or the Ninja Turtles or Back to the Future, any of that stuff that I've written before. It's all very similar in that way. And Sonja is none of that. I do get a little bit of humor in there every once in a while, a little bit of wryness, but for the most part, she just uh, runs at a problem with a sword and wrecks stuff. And I like that. I like the pulp adventure. It's just something different for me to write. It's something that I enjoyed consuming before, but never thought that I would be involved in creating. So it's a different set of muscles, and it scratches a different itch, and it's just a lot of fun. And that's the fun I've been having here with the Chaos characters involved. They're kind of super over the top, and so yeah, also something fun to play with. And I mean, really, that's it. That's me babbling. But the story is about the Chaos characters, which are from the present and all very supernatural based demons and ghouls and vampires, being sent to Sonja's time in Hyboria in the age before history in the barbarian times, and running with that. So that's the fun I'm having with that. I'm about the series is about halfway through. Third issue came out a couple of weeks ago, and will finish at some point in the near future, I think, I hope. And yeah. So, but I mean, yeah, no, it's just I'm all done writing it, and the art's been fantastic by Jonathan Lau. It's been a blast to work on. I had fun, and fun is one of the big reasons that I work in comics.
I'm also a fan of those pulp comics. Like, I really enjoy the Dark Horse omnibus editions of all the Conan comics they put out previously, and some Red Sonja stuff as well. So I'm
Oh
familiar
yeah.
with all those characters, but in terms of the Chaos Comics characters, I felt like, especially when they came out, they were a real kind of sign of their times, and they were very niche at the time. Were
Mhm.
you a fan of them when you were younger?
Well, the catch of it all is I was aware of them because Wizard magazine made a big deal out of them, and that was available everywhere. But I did not live near, and I still don't, near any comic shops, so I wasn't able to go in and check them out at that point. I've checked them out retroactively. I mean, when they said, "Were you interested in writing this comic?" I said, "Well, let's look at the characters." I mean, well, actually, I said, "Yes, I do. I like money," and then I said, "Let's look at the characters," and I was exposed to them much later. But they have. Just like I said, an over the top sense of humor, which I appreciate. And that was fun to work with. So I can't say I was a fan when they came out, but I mean, I wasn't able to be a fan. I was not able to be exposed with them outside of, your occasional Wizard article or blurb.
Yeah, same here. That's kind of how I got first introduced to those characters as well. Wizard was really, really big on them for whatever reason, and it's cool that they're back, and it is pretty interesting to see them all interact with Red Sonja. So
Mhm.
I'm gonna check out that title. But I know something we are both giant super fans of is Ghostbusters, and so let's talk about Ghostbusters Year One now. For folks who are not familiar with that title, can you kind of just give us the elevator pitch of what Ghostbusters Year One is about?
Well, sure. I mean, year one is just, I mean, it's the easiest description of, early adventures. And I mean, that's gone back to DC's year one titles, and Marvel's done some year one titles and things like that. People know what they're going to get. Obviously, the Ghostbusters didn't have technically a year one. They had about a 4 months one, but that's splitting hairs. Um, it's just the easiest way to explain. Here are some early adventures. Here's some things that happened in between the stuff that you know about, and that is precisely what the book is about. It's taking place. It's Let me rephrase that. It is a story of a person writing a book to capitalize on the popularity of the Ghostbusters post saving New York from the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. And so she's going to have questions, this author, and she's going to talk to them, some about the things that we know and some about things that happened during the movie and were referenced during the movie or suggested during the movie that we just didn't see. In the movie, we saw them hire Winston, and then the next time we saw him do anything, it was up against Gozer. So seeing a little bit of his training and his first bust, that was an obvious take. Going back after the librarian as soon as they had their packs, that was an obvious one. Casey Kasem's cameo talking about the nightclub, that was an obvious one to try for. And then the fourth one, which hasn't come out yet, involves their first stab at putting something into the containment unit. So these are things that they happened. They weren't necessarily required for screen time, but they were interesting to see and interesting to have fun with. And yeah, no, that's basically the long version of the elevator pitch. I threw it all in there.
It was a long elevator ride. It's all right. Yeah,
Yeah,
all the way to the top.
that's true. Well, otherwise it's taking the stairs, and you'd have to throw up around 20.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love that you're a giant ghost head. It's so easy to tell that you are with how you write things. And again, I love that you've been covering all these little things that were mentioned in the movie, like the pesky poltergeist and how they danced the night away after, the library ghost. You even did the mass sponge migration, which was a wonderful nod.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to ask you then, there's a lot of responsibility to basically taking these iconic characters and going into their backstories that were never told before, really in detail. There's a lot of weight to get put on your shoulders. So what was it like to be given this opportunity, and how have you been able to run with it?
I mean, honestly, it doesn't feel like a lot of weight on the shoulders because it's just pure fun. As I established before, I'm in comics for fun, and I love it. The Ghostbusters has been the most fun job I've ever had in comics, and going on almost a decade here, or a decade technically since I started typing on the first Ghostbusters script I ever did. It's a blast, and I love it. So yeah, I don't feel any pressure in that sense, and the responsibility is just keeping the characters true, which I hope that I'm still doing for people reading it. It's just it's an honor for me to be able to take something that I've loved for so long and continue to build things into it. So yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to think of a better way to put it, and that's really it. It's just I'm happy to be able to do this. So it's not stress, it's not weight, it's just breezy enjoyment, really.
And I think your interpretation of the characters is so spot on and perfect. Like, you've really nailed everybody's personalities. And that's kind of my next question is, when you write these characters in particular, do you have rules or guidelines in your head for how they would react and respond to situations? How do you write these characters that have been established for so long?
Well, I mean, that's part of the thing. When you look at the Ghostbusters, you're not just looking at the Ghostbusters as in the characters of Ray and Peter and Egon and Winston and so on. You're seeing that, of course, yes, but you're also seeing the careers of Bill Murray and Harold Ramis and Ernie Hudson and Dan Aykroyd and so on down the line. They've been in a lot of things, all of them. In many of these things, their personalities carry through even over and above the character, probably 75% of the time. So it's their voices. You know how the vocal cadence sounds. So if something doesn't sound right, it stands out in your head. I mean, having seen 30 years worth of movies and TV shows starring these guys, and also so much work starring the other actors who were in the movie. It's their voices are very clear. You don't have to guess in how they would sound reacting to something, because if you haven't seen them reacting to something in Ghostbusters, well, you might have seen them reacting to something, a situation, or event in another movie, and their voice is used there. It's a clarity. So I mean, having all that input in the brain makes it easier to process and pull up the right sound, the right choice of words, and I mean, that's what I do. So it's just, I mean, the fact that the actors are all so deeply entrenched in pop culture makes it easier for me to pick up the right sounds, and easier for people to hear the sounds, because they've seen all those movies too, and they go, okay, yeah, no, that sounds right. That's the right word. That's the right sound. I recognize it from everything they've ever done.
Yeah, I've got to say, just reading it, even still now, you're doing such an amazing job of catching all of that and capturing it and putting it onto the page. Like, I can hear all of their voices as I read it, so it's really been great reading it.
Thank you. That's been the goal from basically go, is to make sure that the voices sound right, and then hopefully everything else follows, because when the voice is right, the reaction is right, and that leads to everything else.
Absolutely. Now, one of the things I also really enjoy is all of the fan service that are in these issues, whether it's a drawing from your partner Dan or something in the writing by yourself. So for you guys, and I guess for you in particular, what kind of research do you do to put in these little fan service bits in there? Like, are you just constantly watching the real Ghostbusters cartoon, or is it just stuff that you know as a fan?
Yeah. It's I don't add anything in. I mean, I don't go I don't go digging for stuff to add in exactly. Sometimes, I mean, I need, something X to fit this role into the book. Well, I mean, I might go researching then. 85 to 95% of the visual gags are all on Dan. He's drawing it when he's bored. Sometimes I've saw them and said, Dan, I wish you hadn't put that in there. But, I mean, most of the time I mean, when I wish he hasn't put something in there, it's because I wanted it to not have attention called to it. You know what I mean? That kind of a thing. When he draws a character that is, a speaking character, look like somebody that we've seen before, and that adds a different connotation. That's the only time it's ever been anything for me. But no, it's really, Dan has said the same thing. It's all kind of just off the top of our heads, as opposed to we need to fit more in. So if a joke or a reference has popped in there, yeah, no, it's spontaneous, except for the big exception was Kylie. When we brought her into the book, it was because I wanted to have an assistant for Ray, somebody manning the bookstore, somebody who would be into the research, somebody who could be a little bit who could be in the same headspace as Janine, as in not taking any crap from the guys. And I was going to make up a new character, and Tristan Jones, who was doing backups of the book at the time, said, no, it really should be Kylie. And I'm glad we went that way.
I am too, because I'm a giant Kylie fan. So, as you mentioned, Ghostbusters Year One will be concluding with issue 4 coming out very soon. What are the plans for Ghostbusters after this concludes?
Honestly, I don't know. It's I basically I've sent out bunches of ideas, and I've done that throughout the run, and many of them have hit and many of them have not. But it's basically I serve at the pleasure of IDW and Ghost Course. So if they decide that A, they want to take a break, or B, they want something specific that I haven't thought of, or C, something else that I can't think of now, maybe they don't want to do Ghostbusters comics anymore for a while. I don't know. Yeah, no, I mean, it all comes down to them saying, okay, here's what we want to do next, or here's what we don't want to do for a while. And then I'll run with it from there. Hopefully, this, they'll get back to me with a let's go soon. I mean, after all of this pandemic is returned to normalcy. But I mean, I can't see the future. After every Ghostbusters thing that I've written, I realize that it could be the end, or there could be more coming, and that's where I'm kind of at right now. And I'm hoping it's not the end, and I'm hoping there's more coming, but I don't know. Much as I'd like to see the future, I can't.
Yeah, it's always baffled me how IDW is kind of, they've put a lot on the Ghostbusters franchise as comics, but, I was surprised when they even canceled the main running series a few years back. I never even understood that. I mean, actually, I'd like to ask you, do you know what the reason was that they canceled that initial run of the comics?
At the end of the day, it could have been anything. I don't know. It might have been sales. It might have been they wanted to take a break from it and focus on miniseries for a while. They've done that from time to time. I didn't actually ask. I just I was more focused on what am I going to write next? Come on, I need money. But yeah, no, they just decided that was where mass hysteria was a good point to end it for a little while and then start working on almost immediately. We started working on the Turtles crossover,
Which was also really great, a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Yep. So you've brought in a lot of characters from the real Ghostbusters cartoon, and one in particular I know fans really want to see. I know I really want to see him. Is the Boogeyman, and he was teased in a few backup stories in some of the Ghostbusters comics. So, has there been any talk of giving the Boogeyman some screen time, if you will, or any other RGB characters in the comics?
Well, I mean, yes and no. When we do something in the main line, the Ghostbusters Prime, what we call the Dan designed movies that take off in the movies, we try to characters, I should say, that take off in the movies, not movies take off in the movies. Anyway, we try to keep the real Ghostbusters stuff largely where it is. And if we are going to take a concept from the real Ghostbusters, we flip it a little bit. We make it something that would fit more into the movie universe. And so we did do a Boogeyman, and it just was different than the Boogeyman from the real Ghostbusters. And the plans were to bring him back at some point, and we just never got around to it. And that was during the haunted horror days, the New Year's and Day of the Dead and such run of books that we did in the second volume.
Right now, beyond the Ghostbusters comics, I just want to get a little info out of you as a fan. So we know that Ghostbusters Afterlife has just been rescheduled to March 2021. I just want to get your opinion on what you think of what you've seen so far in the trailer and all what we know about the movie so far.
I mean, I think it looks fun. It looks, yeah, no, I mean, I'm trying to think of, I mean, I was told a couple of small things so that I wouldn't repeat them in the comic. So, I mean, I know a minor bit, like 2% of the movie. And the stuff that I know is, and I can't. Like I said, I'm trying to dance around that stuff. Basically, no. I mean, the stuff that I know and the stuff that I've seen is, I think that it's going to be a fun movie. I think that it has the right tone, which is that everything supernatural is roughly taken serious. It's the reactions that people have to it that lean towards the humorous. I mean, they deal with it through humor and, blowing stuff up. So, I mean, that is all stuff that I've seen in the trailer, and I feel good about it. Will I like it when it comes out? 90% sure I will. But there's the 10% is all from, working on this so long, I'll be looking at it going, I wouldn't have done that. I would have done it this way. Or I wish I'd thought of that idea. Dang it, now I'm mad. So that's the 10%. The 90%, the fan percentage is I'm just going to go in and I expect to have a blast, which I had a blast with Answer the Call. I had a blast with Ghostbusters 2. I had a blast with the real Ghostbusters and what I've seen of Extreme. So I mean, it would have to have the characters basically look at me, point at the camera and say, I hate you. You're not going to enjoy this, and then just sit in a chair for 2 hours in order for me to not have any fun with it.
Well, I'm kind of curious, as a writer and a critical analyst of a lot of this kind of stuff, looking at the Ghostbusters Answer the Call movie, what would you have done to make it different? And this is, again, not asking your opinion on whether it was good, bad, whether you liked it or not. It's more just like, what do you think you would have done with those characters and that movie if you had the opportunity to write it your way?
I mean, the big change that I would have made is I would have, and I had read some stuff that Paul Feig was talking about this, that he basically, when he saw the original Ghostbusters, he viewed it as the ghosts were props in order for comedy to happen, and that is what he did in this in Answer the Call. And if you look at it that way, that's exactly what it was, and it fulfilled that point of view very well. I would have, I think, likely made the supernatural stuff just a little bit more. I would have played it a little bit more straight, and I would have had the humor be more reactionary to that, and less slapsticky in some scenes, which, I mean, that sounds like I'm trying to say that sounds like a more massive change than it was. It really wasn't. It just would have been some sanding down, basically. I think they got most of it right. I probably wouldn't have done the such a similar story to the first movie, and I might have tried to figure a way to make more connections to the original movie and make it more of a Ghostbusters 3. If you figure what they're doing in Afterlife, or heck, even if you look at Ghostbusters 2, 5 years later, the same cast, and people are like, that didn't happen in '84. That was all a con. Well, I mean, so 30 years later, that attitude could just have happened again. And that was the other thing I remember Feig was saying, was that he didn't think that the movie would work if it had ever happened before. Well, I mean, sure, but people forget fast, and they make up their own minds about what did and didn't happen. So I probably would have done the integration of the original characters into this movie and made it, like I said, a Ghostbusters 3. So, I mean, small tweaks, not huge. Different perspective from where they were coming from, just in a way. But I mean, that would only have probably changed about 10 to 15% of the movie overall. And I think that might have taken care of a few of the louder complaints. And even if it didn't, that's fine. I didn't have such a problem with what existed that I spent a lot of time thinking about how I'd change it. I just took the characters and played with them in the comics and had fun with that. So
yeah, and I really appreciated how you did integrate them into the story of the comics. Great to say, and really integrated all the various Ghostbusters across the various Ghostbusters timelines out there. But yeah, especially the Answer the Call ladies, that was really especially great. Now, I know that you were at Ghostbusters Fan Fest last year. That's actually where I got to meet you. I had you sign a very big fat stack of comics. So I just want to ask you, did you have any time to actually kind of walk around during the event as well, go to any panels, or meet any of the Ghostbusters actors, do anything while you were there?
A little bit, not a ton. I did get to wander around some, and check out the fun people were having, and I did get to gosh, I mean, it was so busy. The only panel I got to do was our panel, the panel with Dan and Tom Waltz, our editor at IDW, for the IDW the comics panel, which was great because our panel was in a screening room, which meant air conditioning, which was awesome. June in LA, bad time to be out in the courtyard. I felt bad for the actors who were on a leather couch at noon in the sun outdoors. I did get to say hello to Maurice LaMarche, who came over to talk with Dan Schoening. And Dan also dragged me over to say hello to William Atherton, which was the man is just a delight. He's such a nice person. And, so that was those were the two that I met. And other than that, yeah, no, I mean, I was having a blast. I was talking with people who enjoyed the book, which is always fun. Seeing some truly entertaining spins on the Ghostbusters uniforms and cosplay. And, I mean, it was just such a positive feeling from all the fans there. It was just, I mean, good vibes throughout the whole day. It was such a great time for me, just for that alone. It was highly positive. I enjoyed it more than just wandering around looking at the lot, hoping somebody said, "You're not supposed to be here. Go back over there." So
That's true. That was kind of one of the best things about the show too, is everybody not knowing where to go and going all over the place. And that's how I ended up getting a ton of photographs and autographs from the various people that were just wandering around the place. But yeah, it was a great time. I'm glad I got to meet you there as well. Now, in terms of other projects that you've worked on, you've done Ghostbusters, you've done Galaxy Quest, you've done Ninja Turtles, you've done Back to the Future. Is there another licensed property that you would like to tackle?
Yeah, Indiana Jones. I'd love to tackle the Indiana Jones mythos. That would be fun. every once in a while, I get the sense that it would be fun to do something with Star Trek, something small. Um, I mean, if I sat and thought about it, I mean, there's a ton of potential license things that would be a blast to do. Elder Scrolls would be a lot of fun to do from the video games. Uncharted, thinking about that, just taking a track from the Indiana Jones. But I'm really, I've gotten to do so many of the ones that were nearest and dearest to me. I got to do Transformers, which I was a big fan of when I was a kid. I got to do Ghostbusters and Ninja Turtles. I got to do a little bit of Spider-Man. Technically, that was licensed the way I did it, um, and Galaxy Quest and stuff. So I mean, I've got no complaints. If I didn't get to do any more, I would obviously miss the best job I ever had. But it's there's nothing else that I can think of that I've really got to go after and jump to and absolutely have and take a long run on. Nothing that comes to mind other than the ones that I mentioned. And I guarantee you, as soon as we're done here, 5 minutes later, I'm going to go, oh God, I should have said this and this and this and this. And because, there's just a lot of wonderful stuff out there, and it's fun to play with the toys. And, it always will be. I mean, that's why I like to tell stories. And I do like to tell my own stories, but I like to play with other people's toys and see what kind of spin my personality can give them. So I know more will come up, and I can't wait to find out what that is.
Now, we here at Nerd News Today are giant Star Trek fans. IDW has the Star Trek license as well. So, since you brought it up, I'd love to know, how would you do Star Trek and Ghostbusters as a crossover? Because that's something as a fan, my brain would explode. But how would you make that work?
Oh gosh, I mean, it'd be tricky. I'd have to figure something out. But I mean, it would just there would be obviously there would be some kind of time travel, and there would be some kind of ghosts on the Enterprise. Basically, that's what it'd be, and everything else would be character interactions. So they'd have to figure out how to get the ghost off the Enterprise, and then figure out a way to get home, but the real fun would be, taking these 4 to 6 Ghostbusters characters and have them interacting with the Star Trek, whichever Star Trek cast you pick. It could be volatile, or it could be just very, very funny. In fact, I'm imagining now how much funny it would be to have Q and Venkman just tear around for a scene. That would be fun. Or it would be fun for Egon and Spock, or it would be fun for I mean, there's just any number of ways, and the fun of these crossovers is not the plot; it is how the characters meet and interact with each other, because that's the new thing. If their Ghostbusters are there, it's going to be a ghost involved. That's old hat for them. But the Ghostbusters interacting with the Ninja Turtles, or interacting with the Autobots, or interacting with, in this case, Star Trek, any of that stuff, that's where the fun comes in, those personalities clashing, and that's what I enjoy writing the most. The thing that I tried to pitch for quite some time that didn't quite come together was Galaxy Quest and Star Trek, and that was all just because of one scene that came to mind. And I won't say what it is, because on the off chance that I actually get a chance to do it, I want it to be a surprise for everybody. But it was just one scene that has nothing to do with action, and it was just a character bit and a joke in reference. You know what? I'll have to tell you later. Get your take on it, but I won't spoil it for the listeners. So just on the off chance that I can ever get a chance to do this, which knock wood, I will, and it'll be like 75% of the Star Trek fans will be, hey, cool, and then the other 25%, why? No, you heathen. But anyway.
That sounds really great, though. I'd love to see that happen. And I'm just thinking now, Star Trek and Ghostbusters. I don't know if you're familiar with the Next Generation episode, Sub Rosa.
Oh boy, I tell you now, I'm just now doing a Next Generation rewatch, because I haven't actually watched the TV series since it was new. So all of these, I mean, as I'm watching, I'm getting, oh, I remember this scene now from 30 years ago, but I'm rewatching it, and I'm just I'm falling in love with the cast and the stories all over again, and I'm having a blast. So yeah, no, I'll I'll let you finish your point, but I'll get back to it and pay attention when I get to this.
Yeah, I was just thinking, when you get to season 7, you're gonna see an episode called Sub Rosa, and basically it's Dr. Beverly Crusher and a ghost, and her and the ghost, they get it on. There's some weird stuff. I'm just imagining Venkman dealing with that situation, so I imagine you're gonna have a lot of fun when you see that too.
But Ray already dealt with that situation.
Oh, he did. He'd probably want to join Beverly.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness, yeah, no, it's fun. I'm having a blast with this rewatch, and I've just gotten to the I've just popped into season 4. I'm 3-4 into that. So I mean, yes, we're good. And I just also finished Picard as well, which I enjoyed quite a bit. So yeah, no, it's fun. I'm kind of rediscovering Star Trek and enjoying it, and maybe I'll come up with some stories at some point that I can pitch for that. Although I have a lot of friends who are writing Star Trek now, who are all of them better and more versed than I am. So it would take Herculean effort in order to get something past them that they haven't already thought of and pitched. But, who knows? Maybe something will come up.
I'd really love to see your take on Star Trek and comics form, so hopefully that can happen. But again, now, as I mentioned at the start of this episode, we are currently living in the coronavirus days, and a lot of us are stuck at home, quarantined, locked down. So I wanted to ask, what are top 3 comics you would recommend to folks to check out right now they probably haven't read before, who are just sitting at home with nothing else to do?
Okay, let's see. Top 3. Well, you know what? It's going to be hard because when I'm put on the spot like this with top lists, again, like just a minute ago when you asked what license things I'd want to come up with, it's a thing where I draw a blank, and then as soon as the conversation is over, I think of a laundry list. But
of course, I wish there was always a better way to ask that question too, because it's always like, hey, talk now.
Yeah. There's never, I mean, outside of like giving like a week's advance notice for somebody to mull, that's the only real way. But it doesn't always work out that way. So let me think. Some of the stuff that I would recommend. I'm going to have to think, and I'm just going to look around my office here and see if anything comes to mind. Okay. So I mean, some of these are going to be very familiar. I'm going to list more than 3. I'm just going to do some of the ones that I've spot that are worth reading. My friend Erica Henderson, who I worked with on Johnny Bravo years back, and Kyle Starks did a book called Assassination. That came out through Skybound. It is a lot of fun. It's a 2:00 in the morning HBO B action movie, and it is very funny and very fantastic. I can also recommend Kyle's take on Dracula versus a ex-basketball player called Old Head. That is he just did a Kickstarter for that, and the digital version I believe will be available soon. So I mean, it's a good laugh. Good laughs are needed in these times. Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson did Manhunter back in the 70s. That was collected. That's a fantastic thing to read if people haven't. I spot the Joss Whedon and John Cassidy run of Astonishing X-Men. That is something that more people than not have probably read, but I'll recommend it. Darwin Cook's run on Parker. Those 4 books, highly recommended. Some crime stuff, some wonderful art, and simple, spot color choices from Darwin. Awesome. And I just going back to superheroes, I just read Ed Brubaker and Steve Epting's The Marvels Project from about a decade back. And, they took a look at the timely era, just previous to Captain America. And that was some good stuff. So those are a few. And, hopefully there's something in there that isn't so familiar that people will give it a chance to look at. But I mean, give me another 10 minutes, I'll probably come up with something else. You know what I mean? There's tons. There's a lot of good stuff out there. And, what a time to discover it. Oh gosh, it is. I laughed out loud. It was absolutely bizarre and very funny. So yeah, vampires versus ex-basketball player, and yeah, no, seek it out. Kyle is a genius.
I'm gonna have to, and just also since we're talking a lot in this interview about licensed properties, I'm gonna throw out a pick as well. And since you mentioned Archie Goodwin and Walt Simonson, I'm gonna mention the Alien adaptation that they did. They did. A graphic novel.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been a while. That was fantastic.
Yeah,
yes.
An amazing read. For folks who haven't read it, it's an adaptation of the Alien movie. But again, these guys I don't even know if they had seen the movie yet. They basically had to base off of just photos, and they kind of had to make things up as they went along. And it's a gorgeously illustrated book, amazing adaptation, easily one of the best movie adaptations to comics ever. So I highly recommend you guys check that out also. So Erik, I know you've got a Patreon page where you do some weekly comics, and I know you also have tons of stuff going on social media. So you can let us know where to find out more about you.
Sure. Well, mostly I'm active on Twitter, and that's Erik Burnham, at Erik Burnham, ErikBurnham. Very simple. That's, or maybe not creative since it's just my name. And Patreon, it's the, hopefully, it's the K that throws people. But, and then, yes, also, I've thrown odds and ends up on Patreon for the last few months. I've done a couple of comic strips a week, and I'm going to segue here now that I have a little extra time back to doing maybe something a little longer, eight pagers here and there, while I have time to do it, and build some stuff up that way. That's kind of where I started, was doing 8-page shorts 20 years ago in comics anthologies. So it'll be interesting to see if I can rework those muscles and get that back going up on Patreon. But for the most part, it's just odds and ends until I see what people like and see what sticks. But yeah.
All right, so there you guys go. That's Erik Burnham, and you guys can pick up the latest issue of Ghostbusters Year One and everything else he does as well in the near future. I highly recommend you do. You won't regret it. Erik, thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.